When the knock came, it was a little after 3 o'clock in the morning. It wasn't a blow from a fist, but rather a more gentle sound. Subordinate Marcus, who was slower and almost hesitant, taking a break from his writing, Hale looked up at one of the smaller police departments in Redwood Point, station tucked away and close to the Colorado woods. Without a doubt, he was not anticipating any guests. This late, and most certainly not what he had in mind, was on the verge of hearing the sound all over again. It wasn't a knock this time. Rather, it was a low. After a scuffling sound, he let out a faint whimper. Door and froze there in the pale light of the door. The lamp that was located on the station's porch stood, a German shepherd covering themselves in mud and limping. While it was shaking its fur, its eyes were matted, full with tiredness and something else, crazy with rage. Its teeth slightly clench in desperation as it plucks. Occurred on a pair of pink sneakers belonging to a child, and hanging on its tattered laces like a dangling thread. Marcus sprang to his feet and raised the flag of distress. The dog's heart was beating slowly, but it didn't. The animal did not make any noise. It merely stared as if pleading with him to comprehend the position. Minutes afterward, Officer Renee Adams arrived on the scene. The moment she saw him at the door, she gasped for air, thrilled as soon as she recognized the dog in the shoe. "Marcus," she murmured. "That's not just a coincidence. A stray." And at that same moment, they were aware of it. Renee said that this dog had not arrived by chance. She crouched down next to the dog, her gaze fixed on it. The sneaker that is still hanging from your ankle. Snout the blood that was on the toe was still fresh. A thin and narrow tread on the bottom of the shoe were comparable in size to that of a young girl. No, more than 8 years old. Her voice trembled. It's possible that this is Lily Carter's. Marcus. Lily Carter, the young lady who had tensed up 2 nights after she disappeared from her backyard. Ago, a pair of pink sneakers was included on the list of his jaw was lacking items in the report about him. When the dog was clamped, it moaned once more. It shifted its course away from them this time, and was unable to walk down the stairs of the station. With barely a momentary pause to look back, Renee arose. "Although it begs us to follow Marcus, we are hesitant. When it comes to a beat, we do not have a warrant. Certain area, but it was merely a wounded stray, and there was a part of him that had previously known this. This was not only a stray, rather, it was a witness. Guide." They seized their equipment and left, accompanied the dog, which was now moving with more. In spite of the fact that it has a leg injury, there were still street lamps that were dark. It is not possible to cast long shadows on the pavement, yelling without any hesitation save for a single. In the dog's eyes, there's a purpose. As they reached the outskirts of the town, the dog suddenly went off course, away into the forest where there was no sound. Should we really be doing this? Renee asked herself, questioning with a glance at Marcus. He did not. Initial response, after which he had a look at there is still a pink sneaker attached to the dog's. "She's out there," he said with a muzzle. "I believe this dog is aware," she said quietly. The dog did not wait. It limped, the owner said, forward, swerving in and out of the woods with not a single instance of stunning speed and precision. Were they able to look back before they exited the room? Grabbing his radio, Marcus listened to the station, referred to it as, "This is Deputy Hale, we are here. Have a potential lead on the girl who is named Carter. Witness is a K9, and there were also K9s that were repeated. Pursuing it into the forest little to the east of Redwood Point has made a request for security and look for assistance," as the static began to crackle, immediately prior to a voice saying, "Copy that, Hale. Warning, units are on their way. Exercise caution." Marcus, Renee, who already had her, nodded in agreement. "Let's go," he remarked while holding a flashlight in his hand. It was then that they ventured out into the darkness. Forest appeared to be a recollection that was thick and silent. Marcus and Renee were following the wild as they went. Dog, the sound of their footsteps becomes more audible. The only sound that could be heard was the damp dirt, the whirled by the dog, which is still carrying the pink sneaker moved in an odd manner because to the combination of care and hurry it did not yell, it did not complain, and it moved, as though it has traveled this way in the past, as if He remembered the branches that Renee had snagged before. The air smelled of pine, and the jacket was wet. The leaves, in addition to anything else another. Metal-based. Marcus murmured, "Blood," as he scanned the entire. Soon after, they discovered the first underbrush. A piece of fabric that has become entangled on a thorn. It was a pale bush that was drenched with dew while. It was taken up carefully by Renee, who was stained. Gloves on the fingers. This could be from Lily's account. The track continued to be dim, but pajama top continued. Intentionally broken twigs and moss that were disrupted. Sporadic occurrences of redness, such as a breadcrumb path of sufferance that the dog never. Instead of looking back, he continued to stumble onward. On the other hand, it is firm every once in a while. To pause, sniff the ground, and make adjustments to its route, and proceed with your journey. A few minutes later, they discovered an ancient tire swaying in the area. While swaying in the wind, the rope has become worn, tattered as if it had been hanging for years without end. Renee, the forest did not become any less dense. I saw a glimpse of Marcus asking, "What am I doing?" She was brought in after he thought he nodded. Suddenly, the dog came to a stop through this area. It tightened its body and turned its head to look at it. The right ear was pricked up and the nose was raised. "Go," he said as he moved deeper into the forest. He yelled out, and they rushed while avoiding the trees, while leaping over branches that have fallen, thorns that are strengthened by underbrush and pulling at their uniforms, but they continued to pursue them. That fleeting resemblance of fur in front of them that help you through the uncharted territory. And finally, the dog slowed down and circled the location at the buried beneath the base of a tiny ridge there, under the protection of a canopy of low-lying branches, and a child's backpack was found among the fallen leaves. The name was sewn on the purple-colored fabric. Lily Renee knelt down on her knees and looked backwards. Marcus, who was present, picked up a tossed item. The nearby juice box is still sticky, but not yet. Terribly cold. She had been here not too long ago, he remarked. Not too long ago, the dog took a quiet position next to, with its chest rising and its chest panting, the sack. Fall due to tiredness, yet its eyes are still open. They continued to be ablaze with determination and fire. The trees were trimmed down, but it wasn't finished. The entrance to a little clearing that was surrounded by shadows. The dawn had barely begun to appear, attempting to break through the canopy of trees. A faint orange glow may be seen emanating from above, to the ground that was covered with moss. And then they spotted a young woman who was shaking while barefoot, a pair of tattered and dirty pajamas that she was bound to, a rope taken from a tree wrapped around her wrists, and a dirt-streaked appearance on her face and ankles. "Lily," Renee responded with a gasp, silent tears. While she was running, she was unable to reach the youngster. There was a figure that emerged from underneath the tree, a tall and slender man with his sweater pulled down. With one hand, he held a low over his face position, the blade of the knife, which caught a gleam of. When the sun began to rise, the dog was the first to reply with a low, guttural growl that is deep and low, appeared to emerge from the very core of its being, made a move at the man, who became scared but it was already too late to do anything about it. It was like a thunderclap as the dog hit him. Jaws that were forcefully snapped, the knife flew from, as he stumbled backwards and screamed. His hand. In a matter of seconds, Marcus was on him, and he kicked him. As the weapon was removed, the man was thrown upon his practiced handcuffs and placed him on his stomach. He yelled out, "Don't move," but they did not move. Not isolated from the trees that were located beyond the movement and shadows that are changing clearing. Marcus turned the leaves when he heard footsteps crunching. In the nick of time to saw 3 further figures. Out come men clad in dark clothing with dark faces. Half covered, they were approaching at a rapid pace. While they were searching for something at his waist, Marcus raised his firearm behind his back and froze. A voice heard saying, "Hands where I can see them." Behind him said, "Redwood Police Department, down your." Backup had arrived from the direction of the weapons. Beyond the clearing movement, there are trees. The shifting of shadows, the crunching of footsteps. Just in time to witness, leaves Marcus turn around to see. Another 3 people appear, all of them males clad in black clothing with their faces partially covered, were drawing near, with one of them becoming closer. Anything that was by his side, Marcus raised his hand. To the extent that I can see, his weapon frees his hands. Them, a voice yelled from behind him, Redwood. The backup had arrived. So the police lower your firearms. Torchlight shone through the branches of the trees. Officers and tactical equipment rushed into the room, the weapons that are drawn within the clearing. Just a few seconds before the would-be attackers. Cornered, cuffed, and forced to remain on the ground. Renee let out a whiff of air that she hadn't. Noticed that she was holding the phrase, they weren't. Marcus mumbled, I'm working by myself. And this was the... Lily had already been informed of the intended Renee. Her knife was slicing through the cords while shivering. It's okay, she whispered to you, with your hands. When she was finally safe, the girl fell into her arms, her entire body shaking, yet she clung to them. The dog was bloody, and Renee was like a lifeline. Limping over and pressing its head, it pressed its head. It did not bark while it was against Lily's side. Did not complain, but rather put out a quiet, relieved sound. A sigh. It had eyes that were gentle and filled with something. Marcus glanced at that and thought it looked like peace. The individual who is still secured to the ground. Who is it? Although he did not respond, he did not. Even though they had the girl, she was still alive, as well as the dog that had gotten away from them. They were the ones who had battled, directed, and had safeguarded as if it were designed to perform exactly what it was supposed to do. As Lily was wrapping up, these paramedics raced to her. Her, as she was restrained in a foil-lined blanket. Essentials when they loaded her into the vehicle. Lily looked over at the dog as she was the ambulance. He extended a feeble hand that was also shaking. She hushed, Cha-Dow, as the dog hobbled alongside her. When she got near, she lightly stroked her fingers, as it sat next to the open door with its nose. Door of the ambulance, as if it were refusing to leave. As long as it was certain that she was secure, the sun had reached its peak by the time they arrived. When she returned to the station, Lily was not in danger. Her vital signs remained steady at the hospital. Both the accused and the dog were taken into custody. Curled up and still limping, the person was quiet, beneath the steps that are located behind the redwood, while pointing at the police department, as if he had. During his entire life, Marcus has been there and watched him for a brief period of time without making any noise or wagging his tail. There was nothing but quiet in those profound, the eyes of vigilance, a type of quiet determination. At that moment, Renee recalled that she had mysteriously vanished inside, and then came back with the Carter family file being flipped through. Pages that had yellowed. She paused at a message written by hand from approximately 5 years ago. A stray that was hurt was discovered near Old Pine. Trail adopted him and gave him the name Shadow. Marcus leaned in closer to the writing of Nathan Carter. This is our guy, the report, and he is squinting. Nathan's search for the dog was described in detail. One winter, when it was partly frozen under a log, thin damaged ribs that were visible in the morning. Brought him back to his house, fed him, and hugged him. Shadow was the name they gave him since he, same as how she did, followed Lily about the home. He was a member of the Shadow for some weeks. The family that slept next to Lily's bed guarded her. Akin to a sibling, the storm arrived at that moment. A gate that was left unlatched and a burst of lightning. Darkness escaped, and they never returned to them. Renee mumbled and looked for him for several days. They believed he had left for good, but he came back. Hadn't vanished. He had made it through the ordeal. Someplace in the woods alone themselves and no one else. When Lily disappeared, he came back, but he did not find a safe haven in order to repay a favor that Nathan and his wife did not arrive until the afternoon. The station at the moment that Nathan emerged from the vehicle, he appeared to be 10 years older than the tension caused by dread and the photo in the file, and the weight of days without sleep hung heavily on him. Although, after he noticed the dog lying beneath the porch, he murmured to the dog, Cha-Dow, and then froze. The man gently lifted his head and stirred a little. He struggled to stand, and he was limping toward. Despite the pain, Nathan never wavered in his resolve. When he got to the man, he leaned in close to him and put his head against Nathan's chest and leaned back. Nathan knelt down and placed his hands on his knees, began to shake as they dug their teeth into the dog's. You've returned, he murmured in a little voice. When you came to remember us, Tears began to fall. Free then from Nathan, who was married to his wife. Even from Renee, who had stepped in a stealthy manner. For the purpose of giving them room, there are no terms that are robust enough to support the weight of. Marcus, at that very moment later that evening, remained positioned by the window of the station shadow. On a worn-out blanket, he finally fell asleep. Simply opened his eyes. He hadn't moved much at all. A single instance in which Lily's name was referenced on A. Marcus took a call. However, he did not return for the food. He whispered, and Renee nodded her head in agreement. Came back to see family. The word spread more quickly than anyone anticipated by the time the following morning rolled around. There was a local source that had reported the story. A conversation about the regional news, dog saves, child missing, ran one of the headlines. She returns to her home in the shadow of Redwood Point. There were also images of Lily that were distributed. Within the ambulance that Shadow was sitting in, his head was lowered as he stood next to the stretcher. Although it is a sleepy sentinel, the town has already knew that they recognized it in every hushed voice. Prayer for each and every tear that the searchers shed. At that time, every solitary glimmer of hope was clutched to. It took hours, but finally appreciation was pouring forth. Flowers were delivered to the police station by the public. Illustrations were left by youngsters at the station. Figurines of a dog standing on a gate made of stick. Watch over a young girl who is using a colorful crayon. A series of colors that spell out, "Thank you, Shadow." Businesses in the community contributed food supplies. Even an embroidered bed for his dog that bears his name. On the side of the building, someone painted a mural. A shadow of the bakery that was sitting next to a tree. Although his eyes were peaceful and protective, Shadow remained uninterested in the attention that he received. Nearby the station and in close proximity to Lily. Every time she came to see, he would not show up. He did not beg, but rather he simply watched, barked, listened, and remained as if standing guard in silence. Anything that wasn't visible to everyone else, Lily, the beginning of her gradual recovery from the trauma, to smile once more to begin with, but only after she saw a shadow and subsequently began drawing more frequently. In her sketchbook on a regular basis, always with him. He was always safe with her by his side, and whenever the request to visit the station was made by her, there was never a refusal from the parents. They understood. The connection that exists between a girl and a dog was crafted not in ease but amid the gloom of the night. It is a product of dread and recollection in the past, an underlying meaning that goes beyond language and the town. A person who was once shy and dubious began to, not only in yourself, but in something else as well. Safety, but when it comes to love, loyalty, and the thought that there are moments when the ones we think lost and are simply waiting for the appropriate moment to come. It had been several weeks since the moment to return, but the village of Redwood Point comes to the rescue. Not to forget that Shadow had developed into a legend in its own right, which is not limited to what he accomplished, but because of what he went through to people. Merely went to the station in order to obtain a sight of him. Some letters left by others and others. Despite the fact that it brought snacks and toys, and each and every shadow stayed steady, quiet, and close. Lily paid a visit to the folks in whom he had complete faith. In many cases, her recuperation was gradual but consistent. There were instances when she experienced nightmares, although they were not often, and became more lenient with each visit to the police. Pause per single second that is spent with Shadow. At her feet, she was lying quietly, but she never spoke. Just sat next to him and drew her in by drawing in her. When he leaned in her side and stared at her notebook, similar like a sentry, with no yelling or complaining, just merely a source of solace on a particular afternoon. To the right of the entrance, Nathan Carter stood, stationed when his daughter is exerting pressure on her. Proceed to shadows, and he did not interfere. He simply watched them. Later on that evening, I was silent and full of thinking. It was a knock on the door of the station that he made. A distinct kind of concern could be seen in his eyes. I am aware that he has been present for some time, he stated to. I'm aware of what people think about Marcus and Renee. At this point, he is a part of everyone, although he was once ours, and I believe that he is still Renee. Nathan, you want to take him home? You should do it. I only hesitated if he wanted to attend in the first place. a desire to remove him from the situation he is in. Secure. But Lily, she has a better night's sleep when she, realizing that he is close by, Marcus is crouching down. He yelled out to Shadow, who was lying close to the, "Hello, buddy, you want to go home?" The door is open. Dog gently raised his head and glanced at the people. Towards Lily, who was standing a few steps away, Nathan. With hope brimming in his eyes, he stood slowly yet. Great intent. She made her way to Lily via walking, lowered herself to her knees, and hugged him. Nathan drew in a deep breath and then let it out. A decision that had been held for years before it was. On that weekend, Shadow went back to his house. Noah had cleaned out the old dog bed that they had. She believed that they would never employ Lily again. The sketches that she had placed around the images. Shadow, dressed in a cape, is seen standing in front of a gloomy jungle with their eyes shining brightly above it. The framed photograph from 5 years ago was hung up. Darkness coiled itself around Lily's feet as she walked. While he was there, he read a picture book. Shadow, which belonged to it, soon adjusted it was. He proceeded to follow on, as if no time had elapsed. From room to room, Lily once more slept by herself. Her bed was waiting for her at the back door. She said. Attended school. He was older and slower than before. In spite of this, he was still hers, and in his eyes, only tranquility prevailed in the community. There was no regret. Comprehended that they had desired to lay claim to him. However, they were aware that this was the correct course of action. I still sometimes see him when I go for walks with him. In the park, Lily is seen taking a nap beneath a tree, leash that is being held by a young girl who does not. I flinch longer at the darkness on the day that he departed from the station. A meeting was conducted by the police department for good. A casual get-together for the purpose of saying goodbye. Simply a polite salute and an embrace over a cup of coffee as. One moment later, Shadow emerged from the front entrance. The previous time he stopped at the highest step, the individual turned around and gave a slow wag of his tail. Is not a farewell. It is simply a thank you. Shadow began to calm down in a short amount of time. When he entered his new yet old home, he was at ease. The smell of the floors, the sound of the stream, sound of Lily's voice coming from the back porch. At night, he could hear footsteps on the stairs. Slept next to her bed, just as she had done in the past. When he arrived in the morning, he waited by the entrance, but each morning, at the break of dawn, Shadow accomplished something. On the other hand, he would go out into the backyard, relax in the shade of a huge pine tree next to the fence, and with his back to the forest, he never barked. He did not stand up very often. He simply sat there, remembering that it was his while remaining alert. A pause for him to think about things at his own pace. What he had experienced and what he had gone through. What he had lost and what he had at last discovered again. There was a day when Lily questioned her father about why Shadow. Was it true that Nathan knelt down next to her and, because he remembers, he remarked with a smile. It is sometimes the act of remembering that bravest thing of all, Lily said as time went on. Her laughter came more easily to her after she had been healed. More vibrant drawings, yet each and every one of them. Shadow was constantly present in it, watching over them. Ever close by, since there are some stories that don't. Must have loud ends, some of which must just be. Both Shadow and he remembered, and Shadow did recall. Agony, compassion, fear, and love, as well as in. Keep in mind that he demonstrated to everyone that loyalty is something that does not age like love does. After being given, it will always find its way back. In spite of the gloom, even throughout the course of years. Even when it appears that there is no longer any hope, because Shadow that was recalled.